Hello, everybody. This is Bootza from the Laser Sports Academy, tuning in again after the Cascade 1 that we saw last night at Bendigo at the 2022 Zone ZLTAC Australasian Championships. And oh my goodness, did we see some tasty games. They were some really good close games, capped off by one where Spartans just got over Eclipse in that last game. We had Storm beating Spartans by 500 points earlier in the night. There was teams were trying dumping, teams were trying holding. There was all sorts of different meta happening throughout the day. Purpose of this video is just to recap on what we saw last night. Firstly, thank you so much to the people who responded in the comments about the first video. I'll try to get to as many teams as I can, but I definitely won't get to all teams in all parts of the ladder. We're experimenting with different formats of these videos as well. So please keep letting us know what you want to see and what you want to hear more of. Also, a quick disclaimer for anybody that's not familiar with myself or the Zone ZLTAC Australasian Championships. I'm not actually at the tournament at the moment. It's the first one that I've missed in 20 years. I missed 2002 and since then haven't missed one. I had a baby earlier this year and I'm at home looking after my family, but I'll be back next year. I have a little girl now and she's already in training to take you out, Chutch, so look out. And you too, Whippet, she's coming for both you guys, all right? So she did her first roly-poly the other day, so she's pretty deep into her training so far. Alrighty, so if there's anybody at the event who wants to correct me on any facts or anything, I'll always acknowledge that in the next video if I say something that's inaccurate or anything like that. But I'm using the information I'm getting from the stream and from the data and ladders that have been posted by the ZLTAC. So here goes. Let's have a talk about it. The first thing I wanted to start with was just a quick chat about the meta because it appeared that the day started pretty standard in terms of being pretty open. There was a lot of high base games in the early part of the day, and then around the middle of the day, around 1 o'clock, we saw the games really starting to tighten up, and we saw teams starting to do a more, you might say, finals-like strategy where the bases start to drop. They try to take a lower risk options of accumulating tags throughout the game. If you can pinch a base or two here or there, great. And then grinding the game out rather than opening it up. That was a pretty normal change that you could kind of see in the Cascades. But what happened afterwards was a little bit surprising. And what we saw is that when I looked back at the results of the games yesterday, I was like, okay, actually, a lot of the games finished with 6 to 8 bases for the winning team, which is a pretty standard kind of number. It's not like super defensive at all, not like what we've seen in some competitions. So, what was essentially happening is that the first half of the games were playing out very tight, and then at some point in the game, a team realizes that they're out of it, and they start to go aggressive. And once a team opens up the floodgates, the other two teams need to respond. They need to decide, are we going to try and hold these guys back, or are we going to also start just playing the base race game, which is typically the best option in those situations. And it appeared to be that's the way the game's played out. So it's an interesting look at essentially what kind of skill sets are going to be required to win. If that's what continues, if that meta continues through the tournament, which is no reason to believe it will change. Playing tight early, accumulating lots of tags in the arena as much as you can. So it means you've got to be obviously well structured around your defense, not to leak bases, but also good around the arena. You need to be able to accumulate tags. So the Spartans, the Catalysts, the Eclipse, those teams will do well in that situation. Then once the game opens up into chaos, can you, essentially it comes down to fundamentals. Can you execute the fundamentals of the game well under pressure and in chaos? And can you win your standoffs? Can you maintain good communication? Can you make good decisions? All of that stuff is tested when you've been playing for 10 days, all day, every day. And you're playing against some of the best competition in Australia. Some people are not feeling 100% because of the, it's so cold down there and people getting fluey and things like that. So it's a real test of stamina and can you maintain playing, doing the fundamentals, getting all your panel work and everything right, even on the last day when you're at your end of your energy reserves. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Okay, so in terms of the big winners for yesterday, Spartans are the clear front runner in terms of the big winners. They got 4 wins in 2 seconds. The only 2 seconds they dropped were by 500 points-ish to Catalyst and Storm. Their brother or sister team, you might want to call it. And even though they lost to Catalyst by 500, they did beat them on 2 other occasions, one by like 1,500 and one by about 8K. So at this stage of the tournament, Spartans have Eclipse's, Catalyst measure, as it seems, which we'll talk a little bit more about soon, because although Catalyst have maintained their position on the ladder in second, you could say that they're getting really challenged this year. Like if they can win from here, this will be quite potentially one of their biggest achievements, given that they're at this stage of the tournament not the strongest team in the tournament. So the other big winners were Aftershock. They had a big climb. They got 4 firsts, a second, and a third. Now they did have a sweet draw. They beat the Vikings, the Dragons, Albury, the Orcas, and the Hellhounds. They're kind of like the biggest names that they beat in their run. They started somewhere in the, where did they start actually? They started in 10th and they've climbed up to 4th. So essentially, they would have got a pretty good draw in 10th, which they did, and now they're in 4th. They're going to be challenged because the Cascade 2 games are going to be a lot more difficult than they were yesterday. So Aftershock are a weight. They did. They got third to One Up and Bendigo, and they got a second to Eclipse. So and they haven't beaten any of the top teams yet. So that's the weight for Aftershock. Let's see how they go in Cascade 2. Can they maintain that form against the higher tier teams? And of course, notable mentions, the Sabres. They got 5 firsts and a third. Now they did go down to Aftershock and Vikings pretty convincingly. So they're at that spot now where they're kind of around the middle of the table, and they're kind of trying to push into the top half of the tournament. However, because they did get heavily beaten by Aftershock and Vikings, there's still some questions to be answered there for them. So they did make a massive run last time in Darwin, so they definitely have the skill on their team to do it. Really looking forward to seeing what they can do in Cascade 2 if they can continue to get some really good results against some of those middle form teams. Okay, and then Leviathan also had a really good run, 3 firsts, 2 seconds and a third, and they moved up a few spots and did exactly what they did in Darwin, which is play very well. In Darwin, they played very organised, a very organised team, and then they were able to get some good results against teams around their level on the ladder. They were able to climb. And actually knocked my team out of the tournament. Thank you very much for that, Leviathan. Okie dokie. So where are the big question marks at the moment? We have to start with One Up. They went from 3rd to 11th. They got a first and 5 thirds. So let's talk about what they did a little bit. So first game they went in, they played what appeared to be just a normal standard type game. It didn't work out for them. So in the next 2 games, they dumped. They attempted the dump, and I think it was a good call for them because their strength is playing the base race game, opening the game up, having a high score game. They're going to come out on top in those kinds of games. So they thought, okay, in those 2 middle games, they were playing some of the top teams. I think they were playing Storm and where were they? They played Catalyst and Spartans and Storm. So they were the 2 perfect games to test the strategy. They go, okay, we've got to throw everything at these guys and see if it holds up. Now they got thirds. The thirds weren't massive. So in the first one, they were behind Spartans by 11K and behind Catalyst by about 2K. In the next one, they were behind Spartans by about 4K, and Storm were just ahead of them. So they were only a few K off. So it wasn't a huge deficit. They were thirds, but they weren't a huge deficit. They then decided, I think they thought, okay, we're going to try and tighten it up a little bit again. In the last game against Spartans and Eclipse, they lost by about 6K to second, about 9K to first. So they didn't find yet what works for them, essentially. I don't think you could say they got blown too far out of the park dumping, especially the second game they got better at it. They could double down on that, and if that's their strategy in the final and they're really good at it, that can work for them if they can improve it. But what I'm noticing is it works a lot better when there's a second team in there that wants to play that game, and I think it'll matter a lot who else is in the third team in with the One Up guys. So if they get a team like Bendigo have shown that they're happy to open up the game a little bit. And if they get a team like that in there with them, then it plays much more into their hands because they don't have two other teams trying to lock them out, essentially, which is what happened against Storm and Spartans. When they do it, the Storm and Spartans tend to lock the game down, and then that doesn't work so well for the team that's dumped, essentially. Okie dokie. So the other question mark is around Catalyst. They had a pretty good day. They got 3 wins, 3 seconds. But this is Catalyst we're talking about. Like, these are the old Wolfpack, the champion team, 3-time winners. These guys don't get seconds, they get firsts. And they have a contender this year that is proving so far that they're a better team in this arena, which is an unfamiliar territory for them because, the ex-Wolfpack, now Catalyst team, they are typically always still considered the strongest team. Even if they're not sitting in first just yet, they're considered the strongest team, and they have been sitting in first in Cascades in previous years. So, as we mentioned earlier, they dropped 2 to the Spartans, 1 by 8K, 1 by 1.5K, and they dropped 1 to Blitz. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. Are they going to continue to learn and refine what is a traditional kind of Queensland strategy? Queensland players and teams don't mind playing the tight strategies where everybody kind of locks down and, we're happy to have a 3-4-5 base game. Or will they potentially, if they feel like that game for them isn't going to beat the Spartans, they might even actually shift it up. They have to consider that at least. If they've got somebody like a One-Up or a Bendigo in there with them, they can successfully rely on them to play that game with them. And that might make Spartans uncomfortable. It's traditionally would make somebody like Mad Cans uncomfortable to play that game. He'd much rather play the control game, but I don't know how he's feeling this year. He might feel different this year. I know they've been practicing the dump in that arena, and they might feel totally confident playing either game. But all I know is that if you've got Spartans and Mad Cans comfortable in there, you're probably going to have a hard time beating them. You're going to have to come up with something to make them uncomfortable in order to try and pull the rabbit out of the hat there if you can't match them in the game that's currently being played. So, that's Catalyst. Let's see what they can pull out in Cascade 2 if they can get that extra few K that they need to beat the Spartans. Okay, so who surprised me? So I think the biggest surprise for me has been Bendigo. Watching them last night, they got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. They beat Catalyst, they beat Eclipse, so they've beaten some of the top teams. They've retained their spot in the top group. I think they dropped 1 spot, which, they were, I think what are they now? They're still in 5th place. So they're right up there. They're going to have a hard draw again tonight. But what they showed is that they can perform in the hard draw. Like, they had a hard draw for Cascade 1 and they got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. So they can win games up there. That's absolutely amazing for them. I'm really happy for them that they've performed to that level, and I hope that they can continue that into the Cascade 2. Who's also happy? We've also got probably pretty happy Eclipse. They got close to the Spartans in the last game last night. They'll be really hanging their hat on that. They were still a little bit inconsistent yesterday, but they're still learning. They're a new team, and to get that close to Spartans in that game last night and to go home with that'll fill them with a lot of confidence, actually, and they should go into Cascade 2 pretty confident. But there's still a lot of work for them to do because there is definitely clearly Spartans showing to be the best team so far. Catalyst are a clear second, and then there's the rest. If you look from Brisbane Eclipse down to probably the Dragons in 12th, there's 8 points between them. So 3rd to 11th is 8 points. You've got 8 points up to second again. So there's Spartans, then there's Catalyst, and then there's just a big batch of teams that are going to be battling for that 3rd spot in finals potentially. Not barring a complete surprise from another team. So Eclipse will be pretty happy that they moved up to 3rd. Now they get to play more harder games in the Cascade 2 because they've moved up a few spots, and they're going to get a good look at Eclipse and Catalyst. Catalyst and Spartans. Alrighty, so Vikings looking good. The Bendigo is their biggest scalp so far, so they'll have a newer draw, they'll have a harder draw this time, so let's see how they go. The Orcas have played some really good games too. They beat Eclipse and One-Up in one of their games last night. They would be pretty happy with where they're going, I reckon. I think they are going quite well, good look forward to seeing if they can continue their form. It looks like they are improving as well. I think they're win against Eclipse and won. It would have been one of their later games yesterday. So they're getting better each time, and they've got a lot of experienced players on that team. And Hybrid is leading from the front. They've got Flash, they've got Rogue, and they've got Simi. You know, those they've got enough knowledge of the game on there to to be able to play strategically this arena really well. So yeah, we've also got Apex is still sitting in that mid the gatekeeper role. They haven't got any big scalps yet. I hope to see that they can take some big scalps today. Now the Storm, they moved down a bit, but they beat the Spartans in one of their games, and they are going to come up with they beat the Spartans and one up in that game, mind you. They're going to have a much better draw in Cascade 2 because they've dropped down to, where have they dropped to? 9th position, which is going to give them a much better draw, but they're still only 4 points off 5th. So they're right up there. They could actually have a really good finishing position after Cascade 2 with the draw they'll get. So, and then there's the Outlaws who lost to Bendigo by 100 points, which is proving to be, no easy feat to beat Bendigo, and they beat the Dragons as well. So they've gone up. They've performed pretty well, but they'll be looking to take some scalps as well today. So that's just a bit of a update on Cascade 1. The games have been brilliant so far. I can't wait to see Cascade 2, to see, if anything changes in the meta. If there's anything you want to hear in these updates, we're going off the cuff pretty much, just sharing what I've seen so far. But if there's anything particular you want me to talk about or anything like that, please feel free to share. And I hope you're getting some value out of these updates. Okay, guys, take care. Talk to you soon.